Not since 1997 has a Democrat represented Montana in the House of Representatives. But a smoke jumper, meaning someone who literally jumps out of planes to fight remote firefighters, is giving it a go in Montana's 1st District. It covers the western part of the state, and despite including the liberal enclave cities of Missoula and Bozeman, the district broke for Trump by about 12 points in the last election. But smoke jumper and union leader Sam Forstag says he decided to run for Montana's 1st District after a quarter of the firefighters that he worked with were fired by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency last year. First, Bernie Sanders endorsed him, then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Forstag narrowly beat out 3 other Democrats, and he is now taking on a Republican with the full backing of his party. Conservative radio host Aaron Flint, who's running to replace retiring Representative Ryan Zinke, is endorsed by Zinke, as well as Governor Greg Gianforte, Senator Tim Sheehy, and Donald Trump, of course. But as the Montana Free Press noted at a Democratic primary candidate forum in March, Forstag was the only one on stage in work boots. And Democrats are hoping Forstag's populist politics, formed by his union work in Montana, will deliver a winning coalition from an electorate that feels disconnected from the people who are supposed to represent them. Joining me now is Sam Forstag, union leader, smoke jumper, and the Democratic candidate hoping to flip Montana's 1st congressional district. So thanks so much. I'm so glad to see you on set with me here. Tell me a little bit about why you think, after all this time, that this red district is flippable to blue.
Well, we know a Democrat can win in western Montana because a Democrat just won last cycle. John Tester, our U.S. Senator for 18 years, won Montana's 1st congressional district while losing statewide. And he did that in a year when I'd offer the National Democratic Party was doing everything they possibly could to make it harder for a Democrat to win in a place like Montana. And I know that we can win because, well, I got a lot of friends, coworkers, union members who are precisely the people who ended up voting for some of the schlubs who are tearing all of these systems that a lot of working people depend on down all around us. And they did not do that because they are too far gone. A lot of folks voted for these people because their lives were not getting better on a material basis year over year, not just in the last year, in the last 5, 10, 30 years. And well, if there's anything government is for, in part, it's to make sure that you can meet your basic material needs when the market is not meeting them. And when it comes to housing or healthcare or childcare, the market's not meeting a whole lot of needs for people in Montana.
So, as I mentioned, part of the reason you decided to run is that DOJ laid off, what was it, a quarter of your colleagues who are these, very elite firefighters who literally jump out of planes to fight wildfires. When you speak to voters, what do they tell you are the tangible consequences of this administration's cuts along the lines of the one that your colleagues just went through?
Well, when we were dealing with the DOJ cuts last year in Montana, the people they fired, they weren't smoke jumpers. They were the lowest paid people in large part that we have in our public lands agencies. When they fired 360 Montanans 2 Valentine's Days ago in one day with no cause and no notice, 85% of them were making $19.70 an hour or less, swinging tools in the woods, running chainsaws, doing the science it takes to actually manage our public lands. And when I called Ryan Zinke, our congressperson, time after time, I got crickets. And so I decided if he's going to come take my coworkers and my union members' jobs, I'm going to come take his. And that is in part what this is about. And they said it was all about government efficiency, right? Well, there's not much more efficient than somebody swinging a tool in the woods for $12 an hour to keep a trail clear. What it was about was power and consolidation and gutting the public services that a whole lot of working people depend on, and the public lands that you might depend on to keep your chest freezer full if you go hunting, or that you depend on to go hiking or skiing, or just to have a little time to recreate if you can afford that time when you're having to work 2 or 3 jobs to keep a roof over your head in a place like Montana today.
So why do you think it was that they went after your colleagues? Again, you said it's not a lot of savings in dollar terms. Yeah. Presumably, these are rural voters who largely vote for Republicans, largely vote for Donald Trump. Yeah. Presumably, this administration cares most about voters like them. Why gut an agency like yours?
Well, I think it is because we have a lot of representatives in Washington who are too corrupt or careless or callous to actually listen to the people being affected by these policy decisions. I mean, like I said, when we reached out to our representative, the Republican in this seat, whose hand-picked successor, Aaron Flint, I'm running against, the guy who dropped out of this race with 48 hours before the deadline to put his political puppet in his stead, I got crickets. He didn't even pick up the darn phone. And what this was about is about actually consolidating power for a lot of people whose incentives are to gut our public services. And that is the same whether it is gutting health care, so that a 62-year-old woman ends up in the emergency room because she couldn't access a primary care doctor, and somebody else is getting richer off of all of our backs, as it is when they gut our public lands. And, well, I end up on a wildfire where I've got to call in large air tankers of fire retardant at $7,000 a pop. It just happens that $7,000 goes to a wildland fire contracting company that one of our U.S. senators owns, and that has made him the third richest man in the United States Senate. The people in power right now, their interests do not align with us. And if we want to make our government work for us as working people, we got to send working people to Washington so we can fight for ourselves.
President Trump today signed an executive order decreasing the size of 2 national monuments in Utah, opening 2 million acres to oil drilling and other development. You have been vocal about protecting public land. Talk to me about why that is important to you and why you think that should be important to Americans.
Yeah, I mean, rolling back protections for Bears Ears and Grand Escalante, that is 2 to 3 million acres of public lands that just lost their protections. And it's not just that, it's 1.4 million acres up in Alaska, in Alaska to the boundary waters in Minnesota. And what I've been telling people throughout this campaign is that our public lands, they're not just those lines on a map. There are a whole lot of people working their tails off to make sure that you can actually access our public lands. And public lands for people in Montana, that's the place you go to get food. That's where you go in hunting season to make sure that you can feed your family. That is where you go if you cannot afford to buy your own ranch land to go hunt on and set up that tree stand. Public lands are one of the last great equalizers we have in the country, and it is one of the best parts of our heritage that we can hand down to the next generation. And I'm not willing to sit down and stand by while they gut our public lands and try to privatize them just to make another buck for their rich donors. That doesn't serve us, and we do not have to accept it. We can change that right now.
Well, Sam Forstek, thanks so much for your time tonight. Best of luck.
Thank you for having me. And if anybody wants to help, go to samformontana.com. I need all the help I can get, and we can do this. Thank you, Catherine.